I just think if you don't read the newspaper and the only TV you watch is the MTV, you shouldn't be allowed to vote.
Hello all, this is Starbird, and I disagree. Thank you for everyone that's asked after me recently. I'm sorry I haven't put out a video in a while. I've been very, very sick. But I'm back on the ball now, so let's give it a go. Today we are going to take a look at a video suggested by the Forbidden Thinker. The author is a chap called Red Pill Ghost, who I have never encountered before. As someone who can best be described as a rigid egalitarian, this video was very interesting because it essentially involves how MGTOW and egalitarianism are incompatible. It's always entertaining to see videos like this in terms of how much the more radical sides of MGTOW are coming to resemble radical feminism, especially the separatist aspects. I'm going to edit this video down quite a bit, since there is a lot of rambling and redundancy. But if you watch the original video, just mentally replace gynocentrism with patriarchy. You'll see what I mean. Anyway, take it away, Red Pill Ghost.
It is a doctrine that all people are equal and deserve equal rights and opportunities.
You're going to have to explain that to me. You're going to have to explain it very carefully.
As a man going his own way, I don't claim to be an egalitarian, and I don't agree with the term egalitarianism because, in my eyes, men and women are never going to be equal.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. I think you're making the same mistake that a lot of feminists do. You are equating equality of opportunity with equality of outcome. Egalitarianism is very much concerned with equality of opportunity and not so concerned with equality of outcome. Equality of outcome goes more into socialism or even communism, which is not egalitarianism at all.
It doesn't matter how hard women fight and strive for equality, it's never going to happen because when you compare the mindsets of men and women and the brainwave patterns, men think more on a logical and they think with knowledge. Meanwhile, women react and they think with emotions. In other words, what I'm saying is, biologically and by thought process, men and women are always going to be different.
Yes and no. Men tend more towards logical reasoning, and women tend more towards emotional reasoning, and this comes from how our brains are wired. As I understand it, men have more connections within hemispheres, and women have more connections between hemispheres, which accounts for some of the differences in thought style. But so what? You haven't really established why this is a bad thing, or why the two processes cannot be complementary rather than oppositional. And it's not 100% thing. Men are not entirely logical, and women are not always emotional. This is plainly obvious. There may be some differences in thought patterns overall, but saying that women do not think at all with knowledge, and men think only with knowledge is a very silly black and white way of looking at it.
Starting off with the law and justice system. We all know that in America, and I'm pretty sure other countries can relate to this, women in this country have more rights than men do when it comes to the law and justice system regarding a divorce case or even a child custody battle. They get more privileges than men do, and when it involves a child, the female, unless proven guilty based on being an unfit mother, she automatically gets custody of the children.
Okay, sure. This seems to be one of the big MGTOW talking points, and to keep this video short, I'm going to suggest you take a look at my video I made in response to the turd-flinging monkey, in which I attempted to provide something of a counter-narrative to the commonly accepted stats. In short, yeah, the legal system is kind of messed up and definitely favors women. However, the 50% divorce rate is massively overblown. It's more like 9% if you're smart. Let's say the legal system is completely biased in favor of women. What exactly does MGTOWism aim to do about this?
Meanwhile, the man only gets visitation rights.
Joint custody is actually increasing, especially if you exclude things like welfare moms. Check out my aforementioned video. And beyond this, about 70% of custody agreements are actually decided outside of court. If you really wanted to get into this, a better angle of approach probably would be reproductive rights and men's inability to opt out of parenthood as opposed to women, which I completely agree does need to change, but is a tricky one politically.
And when it comes to a marriage case resulting into a divorce, a man is risking on losing everything. He's risking to pay alimony and losing half of his possessions. Meanwhile, a woman has nothing to risk whatsoever.
Alimony is a tricky one. It's a very outdated concept that is actually under review in a lot of states and other countries, and is probably going to change in the future, I'd say the near future. If you take a look at a recent article where I think it was Florida that was trying to change alimony to a better system, it was held up not by feminists or gynocentrism, it was held up by the powerful lobby that divorce lawyers have, and the interests they have in keeping alimony and settlement negotiations as lucrative as they are now. Women actually pay alimony too. It's not a big number, certainly not big enough, but legally they face the same burdens as men, and women paying alimony is increasing and will increase in the future. While we don't have any recent numbers on this, there was a survey in which half of lawyers stated that they noticed significantly more women paying alimony. Another article linked here discusses how a great deal of men are simply not aware of the fact that they can pursue alimony, or are simply not willing to. It's an interesting phenomenon, and I wonder how much of this comes down to personal choice.
But if we're talking more in the aspects of society as a whole, I would say society as a whole is more of a gynocentric society than it is to be an egalitarianism society in a way.
Okay, up until now I was sort of with you, but here is where you start to go a little bit loopy. Society is gynocentric. This is another common MGTOW statement that is very broad, and you'll need to show me some solid proof and reasoned arguments and also define it a lot better before I will really go into this. I will say that society is both influenced by masculine and feminine elements, and this is informed by our biology and evolutionary nature.
And I say in a way because now you have women in the society, especially in these millennial times now, that act and dress like men. They also work the same jobs that men do. To be honest with everyone, I don't want women to be equal to us, and I don't want them to be the same as men, because when they start acting like men, when they start talking like men, even when they go as far as dressing like men, it is a complete turnoff.
Wait, what? This is a pretty heavy statement to make without further clarification. Do you want women to have fewer rights than men because it turns you off? If this is really what MGTOWism is, then yeah, I'm happy to say I'm not a MGTOW. And I beg to differ, especially in terms of professional attire. It can actually be rather hot when a woman dresses in some kind of uniform.
Also, when you're living in a society, which is the kind of society we live in today, where you have the majority of men who are speaking for women's rights, where you have men that are defending women.
Okay, I am so bloody lost here. What the hell are you saying? Egalitarians want equality of opportunity for everyone, and egalitarians defend people who need defending. I would say that most egalitarians are in defense of men's rights these days in the West, and women's rights in the East.
And as for the egalitarians out there, you're no different than what the feminists are in a way. The only difference is they are against feminism, these groups who claim to be egalitarians, but they are not anti-gynocentrists, and they are not against gynocentrism. This is how men going their own way, or MGTOW, is different from egalitarianism, because men going their own way community members are actually against gynocentrism and the core of gynocentrism. Meanwhile, egalitarians support it.
How? How do egalitarians support gynocentrism? You have not explained this at all.
They are all for gynocentrism, and they do not speak against gynocentrism whatsoever regarding the bad female natures of women, their behavior, and how they expect men to be providers and to provide for them.
Yes, they do. Do you know anything about the men's rights movement whatsoever?
And if a man chooses to go his own way by not persisting women anymore for relationships or even marriage, the majority of egalitarian men are going to frown upon that.
Mostly we frown on it because it goes very much against biology, it's really bad for families and for kids, and it really solves nothing. It's also based, as I've tried to show in previous videos, on a lot of very bad arguments and very bad stats.
They're even going to go as far as shaming on these men who decide not to have anything to do with women at all, but it's because these men are still pro-gynocentrists.
No, gynocentrism is something that MGTOWs have come up with. It's almost like the feminist patriarchy. It can mean whatever you want it to mean. It's some overarching invisible structure that apparently confers additional rights on one group and persecutes another group, but I really haven't seen that much evidence for this as you describe it. And yeah, some anti-MGTOWs will use shaming language, just like MGTOWs use shaming language against non-MGTOWs. Hell, Traversable MGTOW, who I will do a video on shortly, actually advocates for MGTOWs to do this in order to shame men into joining MGTOW. A lot of skeptical egalitarians have a problem with the current radical MGTOWs, much in the same way we have a problem with the radfems. A lack of facts, culty behavior, and general extremism.
And in regards to allowing these women to enter in the male space, I talked about this in a previous video regarding why men going their own way community members do not allow women into the male space when it comes to podcasts and hangouts. The same thing applies for these women who claim to be egalitarians, because it's going to be no different.
Okay, so you admit that MGTOWs are radical separatists that deliberately want to exclude women from their spaces. Huh.
Based on these men who allow such women to come into their spaces, because these men are still wearing a filter over their mouth.
Yeah, people can be possessive over their spaces, and of course personal choice and agency can't factor into this anywhere, right? I honestly couldn't care less about this. It sounds that you are just salty that you weren't allowed on a stream. If you really want to pursue this, I would say that it's because, well, female spaces kind of suck, while male spaces tend to be more awesome. Gaming and comic books are a good example of these, and yeah, men in these spaces will tend to welcome women, because who wants a sausage fest?
And they'll even go as far as defending these women if it comes right down to it.
Egalitarians will defend whoever needs defending in situations where they do not have equal opportunities under the law or are being persecuted in some way. I would say that most egalitarians defend men in the West these days, and women in the East or Africa. How do MGTOWs feel about women outside of the West, by the way?
Because in a way, if you think about it, egalitarianism is no better than feminism.
Egalitarianism is no better than feminism. What the fuck are you on about?
But what egalitarianism really is, it is pro-gynocentrism, because you still have these men who are defending women. They are still speaking on behalf of women, and they are still defending women's rights.
Yeah. In some countries, for example, Islamic countries or certain African countries, women do need certain rights. They are very, very backwards and very, well, patriarchal societies. Are you saying that people should not fight for these women's rights? Can you find me an egalitarian who is fighting for women's rights in the West? I'm a little confused here.
And even though these egalitarian groups are against feminism, and they claim to be anti-feminists, they are still men and women alike who worship the golden vagina at the altar.
I'm sorry, that's just a really funny image. How do we worship anything? Are you saying that the idea of equality of opportunity is somehow feminine?
Which I see them as no different from being feminist, if you think about it in a way. That's why, as a whole, I don't agree with egalitarianism, and I believe for egalitarianism to not exist.
Egalitarianism should not exist. The fuck? Seriously, dude, who don't MGTOWs hate? MGTOWs seem to hate women, married men, men who want to get married, men who are in favor of marriage, or just men who don't enjoy MGTOW. Do you know why people say that MGTOW is turning into a cult? This is why.
As for my fellow audience, I only have the following questions to ask. Do you agree with this video? Did I make enough good points in this video?
No, I don't. You do have some points. Women definitely have a lot of advantages in the legal system, and things like alimony and child custody are in desperate need of an overhaul, which will probably happen in the not-too-distant future. At the end of the day, I get a lot of MGTOWs claiming that MGTOWism is not a movement. It is, and that it doesn't tell anyone how to act, which it does, and that it's not recruiting. It is. I like a lot of MGTOWs, but these radical MGTOWs really stick in my craw. Man, we need a new word for radical MGTOW. Towrads? Radmigs? I like radmigs. Well, they seem to engage in this whole stupid in-group, out-group reasoning whereby no one that isn't a MGTOW is considered worth talking to. Red Pill Ghost, if you end up watching this, you need to substantiate far better A, why society is gynocentric, B, why gynocentrism is supported by egalitarians and how, and C, why egalitarianism is the same as feminism and why it shouldn't exist. And that's me done. Thanks for listening or watching. I'm not quite sure what the correct term is for YouTube videos. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give me a like. If you want to see more like this, why not subscribe? If you didn't enjoy it or disagree or have any suggestions, feel free to let me know in the comments. Cheers all.